I wanted to talk a little bit, if you don't mind, for a minute about rationality, because we've already agreed, I think, and definitely stop me if I'm wrong, that there has to be an intermediary mechanism between the world of facts and the world of values. And well, since we've talked, I've been reading a variety of commentaries on Immanuel Kant. Mostly these have been written by Roger Scruton, by the way. And this is actually the issue that Kant obsessed about for most of his philosophical life. And what he concluded was that empiricism can't be right and rationality can't be right as philosophical disciplines because you need an intermediary structure, and that we have an inbuilt intermediary structure. And that structure is what mediates between the thing in itself, the world of facts, let's say, and the outputs, the values. So then I was thinking,
the truth is we don't quite agree on this. I mean, in my summary of your view of me, I would have agreed with that. But for me, it's just facts all the way down.
Okay,
so you're describing more facts.
Glad to hear it, man.
Yeah.
Why do you need a brain then?
Well, a brain is yet another part of reality. I mean, what I mean by a fact
what does it do?
Anything
if
that is the
facts are
case.
just there, what does the brain do? It has to do something, because otherwise you don't need it.
Oh, well, sure, it does a lot, but your concern, to jump to where I think we're going in this conversation, is how is it that values can be another order of fact? That seems problematic to you. It seems problematic. Seems problematic to David Hume.
Well, it's problematic for me for a technical reason, which is that in order to and we see if we agree on this, in order to perceive and to act, which I believe are both acts of value. To perceive is an act of value because you have to look at something instead of a bunch of other things. So you elevate the thing that you're perceiving to the position of highest value by perceiving it, by deciding to perceive it. So it's an act of value.
That gets translated in my brain into just more facts. You're just giving me the facts of human perception.
Well, okay, that's fine. That's no problem. Right. I'm perfectly happy about that. Yeah. And then in order to act, you have to select the target of action from among an infinite number, near infinite number, close enough of possible mechanisms of action. And so what a biological organism does is take the facts and translate them into perception and action. And the only organisms that do that with one-to-one mapping are organisms that are composed of sensory motor cells, like sponges, marine sponges, which are composed of sensory motor cells. They don't have an intermediary nervous system. So what they do is they sit in the water and they make a sponge. They're so simple that if you grind a sponge through a sieve in salt water, it'll reorganize itself into the sponge. So that's quite cool. The sponge sits in the water.
Don't do that at home.
And what it does, is there's waves on it, and so those are patterns. And then the sponge opens and closes pores on its surface in response to those patterns. So it maps the pattern of the waves right onto its behavior with no intermediary of a nervous system. But it can only map waves, that's all it can do, and it can only open and close pores. That's it. So it does one-to-one fact-to-value mapping. Now what happens is that as the complexity of a biological organism increases, two things happen. The first thing that happens is that the sensory and motor cells differentiate. So now the organism has sensory cells and motor cells. So senses to detect and cells to detect and cells to act. Okay, so then it can detect more patterns because it's more sophisticated at the sensory perspective, and it can do more things because it has specialized motor systems. But then what happens is that as it gets even more complex, then it puts an intermediary structure of nervous tissue in there, and that structure increases in the number of layers of neurons. And what that means is that as that happens, and as the sensory cells become more specialized, and as the motor output cells become more specialized, many more patterns can be detected. Those are roughly equivalent to facts. And many more motor outputs can be manifested, but a tremendous number of calculations has to occur in that intermediary nervous tissue. And that's the structure that I'm talking about. That structure exists, and it translates the patterns into motor output. And it doesn't do it on a one-to-one basis because there are more patterns, more facts, than there are motor outputs. So what has to happen is this tremendous plethora of facts that surrounds us has to be filtered to the point where you pick a single action, because you can't act otherwise. And so the mechanism that reduces the number of facts to the selected action is the mechanism that mediates between facts and values. And it's not simply in and of itself, it's a fact that that exists, but it isn't a simple, that what it does isn't a simple fact. You can't explain it. You can't understand it.
Why not? Why not? Why
Well,
is that a fact?
for the same reason that you can't.
I mean, these.
Look, for the same reason that you don't know what a neural network is doing. Like you can train a neural network, an AI neural network.
There's a distinction between facts and facts that we know, right? There is whatever it is the case, right? And then there's our understanding of it and our misunderstanding of it. So there are many things that we think we know that we're wrong about. There are many things that we are aware we're ignorant of, and there's always this larger space of reality that we're struggling to engage with. And it may in fact be the case that in evolutionary terms, I mean, we know it's the case that we have not evolved to understand reality at large perfectly. That's not the sort of monkeys we are, right? And you could even argue that one cognitive scientist who some of you may have heard of, Donald Hoffman, is arguing now, very colorfully, that human consciousness or the human mind is actually evolved to get things wrong in fairly specific ways, so as to maximize survival, and that
was the argument I made in our first discussion.
No, but here, no, it was not quite, because this still preserves the difference between getting things right and getting things wrong. His argument is that getting things truly right, having a nervous system and a cognitive architecture that could really understand reality, quote, reality as it is, would be maladaptive. And he has some mathematical demonstration of this, that the quote true representations of reality are categorically maladaptive, and that there's a certain kind of error that is, and I'm not sure I buy this argument, but the fact that you can make this argument, the fact that you can differentiate the adaptively useful misunderstandings versus a true understanding that's maladaptive, the fact that we can even talk about that demonstrates to me that we have this larger picture of what is in fact true, whether we know it or not. And this is what religion gets so catastrophically wrong. I mean, religion gives you some other mechanism whereby to orient yourself. In this case, revelation.
Religion does provide those functional simplifications. That's
Well,
actually
yeah,
its,
yeah,
that's
but
actually its purpose.
they're simplifications appropriate to the Iron Age.
Well, some of them are.
If then.
Some of them are, for sure, and that's why we have to have this discussion, because mere revelation and mere tradition is insufficient, and I truly believe that we can agree on that.